Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time and joining us for this webinar, 6 Principles for Teaching Hybrid Classes Effectively. This session is specially designed for grades K-5 teachers. And before I go on any further, I just want to quickly do a sound check. If you can hear my voice clearly, there is a hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If you can just hit that for me, okay, excellent. Lots of hands going up. Perfect. Brief overview of the session before we begin. We will be talking about some of the learnings we have gained in the past year with COVID and how we will talk about the 6 principles that you can have for teaching hybrid classes effectively. We also have the option to get into a breakout room with our curriculum specialist, and I will get into the details for that later. But also, just moving on to the moderators for today, myself, Sarah Shuja, Hamad, and Parveen, we're in the background to help you out. If you have any questions or if you have anything that you want to get back to us about, please do let us know. We're here in the background to help you out. We have DJ with us today, who's joining us early morning in the US. Thank you, DJ, for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Thanks. DJ is the National Director of Professional Learning. He has been in the education business for 25 years. And he's done a lot of PD sessions. You might even know him. He's visited a lot in the Middle East before, and a lot of you might have attended his sessions earlier as well. It's early there. I think 7, is it, DJ?
Actually, where I'm at in Colorado, it's 5 a.m.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be up early.
Thanks a lot. Nice to have you here at our webinar. And like I mentioned, we've got breakout rooms today. So following DJ's session, you have the option to get into a breakout room. We have 3 rooms. We have the science room, we have the math room, and we have the English literacy room. So you'll have the option to get into the breakout rooms. We will run the breakout rooms twice. So in case you want to attend the science breakout room and then get into the math breakout room, you can do that later. I'm going to drop the link of how you can I'll drop the link in the chat, how you can get into the breakout rooms, but we will be sharing that detail with you later as well. So don't worry about that. A bit of housekeeping before I hand over to DJ, just really quickly. Just make sure if you're facing any connectivity issues with the audio, we do recommend you use the call-in function from your phone, although I think we're okay with the audio and you can hear us really well. We also recommend you close down any high networking apps such as Netflix, YouTube, any gaming platform, as this is going to affect the bandwidth of your webinar. You won't be able to see other participants in this webinar. However, there are about 500 people who are attending with you. If you'd like to see the comments of other participants and just engage with everyone, you'll have to select the option panelists and attendees in the drop-down function on the chat box. We will cover Q&A towards the end. We want to keep this as interactive as possible, so please talk to us, speak to us, get engaged. You will share recording of this webinar as well via email, and we will be also sharing the certificates for you after the webinar is completed. Just last slide from me. So just make sure you don't have your mics on. I know a couple of hands are raising up, so please, there are 30 participants raising their hand. Drop a question for us in the Q&A box, and one of the moderators will be more than happy to assist you there. So you can pop up a question, use the chat box to engage with DJ, join the discussion, share your thoughts, and the Q&A box is more so for the moderators. If you have any questions for us, we'll be there in the background to help you out if you face any trouble during the webinar or have any difficulties. And that's it. I will stop sharing at this point. Thank you. Over to you, DJ.
Great. And there were a couple of questions that came up. Just so you know, we will put a link to a document in the chat that will actually have the breakout links that will take you into the other sessions after this one. And then I just want to note, somebody in the chat said when they signed on that I look like Tom Hanks, and they were really excited. Well, I'm not Tom Hanks, but I hope this session is very valuable to you today. One of the things I want to start out with is we look at these 6 principles. And by the way, when we say something is a principle, it really is a guideline that you need to think about in the whole area of hybrid and remote learning. Because one of the things I want to mention to you when you start looking at that, this is just a cartoon that I found earlier in the year, and this was the back to school sale. So instead of looking for their little backpack or looking for their notebook and their pencils and their colored pens, our students were looking for protective gear. And many of our students are still wearing that. Across the US, and I know in the Middle East, every one of our situations is different. My daughter teaches 4th grade in Indiana, and they are back hybrid. So they actually are in person 4 days a week, and then Friday, everybody's remote. They still wear their mask all through school. And then in 4th grade, they sit in 4 pods in her classroom. So 4 different groups. That's the group you go to lunch with. That's the group you go to recess with, and you don't interact with the other students. And the reason they do that is because if one student tests positive, that pod has to go out, not the whole class. But the whole point of this is that we are still in the middle of experiencing unprecedented times in education and in our world. When we first were notified this, we actually had a team over in doing sessions like this last February, and we had 7 or 8 sessions scheduled. We did the first 3 and had to cancel the rest and sent the trainers home because of COVID. And who would have known then that we would still be dealing with this now? So in that situation, whether we're fully remote, whether we're hybrid, or whether we're face-to-face all of the time, there are some things that we've learned during this time that we should take forward with us. In fact, at McGraw Hill, one of the things that happened to us is all of our curriculum we build is built with total digital that comes with it. And this last year, since COVID hit, we've had about a 700% increase in the number of teachers who have been using our digital resources. Now, that's probably not surprising to you, but what our hope is, and my hope, is that some of the great things that we've learned, we will not lose once we go back to school face-to-face and things return more to normal. Because we've learned some great things, and some of that I want to share with you as we walk through this. Now, I've got 5 definitions on the screen. I do have a handout that goes with this, and in the follow-up email that comes out, Shirish will send this out to you. But I want to start out with 5 definitions. These are not new words to you. The only reason I'm bringing them up is because I want us to be on the same bandwidth when we're talking today. And I have used some a little bit differently. So these definitions you'll see in today's discussion. Synchronous learning is live time with the class and the instructor. Now, that live time could be virtual, could be through a Zoom meeting like today. That live time could be face-to-face. It could also be small group. It could be whole group. It could be individual. But that synchronous learning is when you are talking to your teams. And I don't know about you, but across the US, and I'm sure across the world, people are using all kinds of different tools: WebEx, Teams, Zoom, Google Hangout. I actually was on 5 different platforms in one day last week because the people that I was working with were using different things. So you have the ability to actually have that live learning. The second one is asynchronous learning. It simply happens, learning that happens without you being there. Now we've always had asynchronous learning, always. We used to call it homework. I mean, when I was in school years ago, that's what we called it, was homework. So some of that homework was done in groups. Some of that homework was done by myself. But part of that is then thinking about what's best done in that time without the teacher, what's best done in the time with the teacher. And I'm going to add a third category. It actually falls in asynchronous learning, but I want to pull it out because of what we're going to talk about today. This is kind of a unique piece. And this is one of the things that I hope we do not lose when we go back to a semi-normal state. And I'm going to call that independent learning. Now you may ask me, how is independent different than asynchronous? Well, I would like to take the asynchronous work and break it into 2 pieces. The first piece is work, it's like homework. It's things that the student is doing, whether it's watching a video, whether it's interacting with a problem, whether it's writing a passage or a poem. they're doing something that is going to come back into the discussion you're having with the class. So for our purposes today, asynchronous learning is something that's going to tie back to the synchronous learning part. So we're going to discuss it. So if we were working on fractions, then the asynchronous work would be doing with the fractions that we're working on. And we're going to come back and talk about that in the classroom. Independent work, for what we're talking about today, is work that the individual student does that is not necessarily going to become back in the discussion of the whole class. And so what I would mean by this would be support work, this would be intervention work. These are things that are doing one of three things for a student. They're filling a missing learning gap. Secondly, they are providing extra support on the current topic. Or three, they are allowing the student to move ahead in their learning beyond what the class is doing. So really, this part is personalized or specific to the student need. This is something that's best done with technology, and there are a lot of programs out there to support this, but this should be going along with the synchronous and asynchronous work, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The last two, remote or distance learning, is when the learning is at home. And then hybrid learning is when some of the learning is virtual and some is in person. And many of you are now back in a hybrid situation. Many of our schools in the US are back in hybrid, but some are still remote or distance. The principles we're going to look at today fit whether you're doing remote learning or hybrid learning, and they will fit when you get back into the classroom, person to person, because of the unique situation that we've been in. So we're going to real quickly in the next 20 minutes talk about these 6 principles for remote and hybrid learning in the classroom. And really what it's all about is to maximize the learning that goes on in that situation. So the first one I want to start out with is this: use diagnostic assessment wisely. And let me tell you why I'm bringing this up, because there has been a lot of discussion over the past 9 or 10 months about learning loss. And what people mean by learning loss is that it was a big concern going into this school year, because when we went remote back February, March, April, May last year, people were really wondering how much learning are the students not going to take with them. So if you're a 3rd grade teacher, what did they lose at the end of 2nd grade that they really need to understand in order to move forward? And so what people started doing was starting giving these diagnostic assessments. Now, here's why I say use them wisely. We do need to use diagnostic assessment work. We need to really use it all the time, regardless of whether we're in remote learning, whether we're in hybrid learning or face-to-face. And when I mean all the time, we need to be using it with our students, because what diagnostic assessment does is it tells us for a student what precursor skills are they needing that they're going to need in this year they're going into. So again, if I'm a 3rd grade math teacher and I'm taking that diagnostic, I'm looking at 1st and 2nd grade concepts that a student is missing that they need for the current topic. Now, that's important. Here's why we need to use it wisely. We need to make sure that we are not spending all of our time trying to teach precursor concepts to every student in our classroom. We need to identify what those are, but really what's important in a diagnostic is 2 things. One, it's finding independent sources that a student could use to recapture those missing ideas. And then secondly, it allows me to look at the current topic I'm teaching and say, what ideas may I need to cover with my classroom before going into the current topic? That's using diagnostic assessment wisely. Using diagnostic assessment unwisely is trying to cover every missing gap that diagnostic assessment shows in ELA and math before I actually look at the current year's topic. So its main 2 purposes is to identify what source of independent work I need to use with my student, possibly what intervention I need to do with them, and then thirdly, to be able to look at the current topic I'm teaching and say, what precursor idea might I want to use? Now, when I say diagnostic assessment, these come in 3 formats. The first one is a diagnostic that your school may use. And so there are a number of those. We have a partnership with NWEA. They do a MAP diagnostic. They have one for ELA. Those can be used to look at a student holistically to know what ideas. The second one, a lot of your curriculums will come with diagnostics for the units or the modules that you'll be teaching. Those are really good because they focus on the precursor skills for that unit. And then thirdly, some of the benchmarks can also be used as diagnostics to be able to see those student ideas. Use your diagnostic assessment wisely. This is probably one of the most important ones that I'm going to talk about. And this one is about adjusting pacing expectations. And here's what I mean. And you guys, we have all discovered this. I hope it's something we don't lose. In a hybrid situation or a remote situation, you cannot cover everything that you would do in a face-to-face situation. You just can't, okay? And what that means is that we have to adjust our pacing in order to do that, in order to look at it and say, what could I do to actually cover the things I need to cover? And why can't we do that? Because you know what? You can't keep, just like you guys, these sessions today are about an hour and a half with both breakouts. We know we can't have you on a Zoom meeting for 3 hours because our attention span wanes, all of those kinds of things. It's even that much more with our students. So I need to look and say, what am I going to cover? And guys, this is hard for us as teachers, okay? When I pick that math book up, I want to cover every single lesson. And I will tell you, I taught math and science. I always felt bad when I didn't finish the book. And you know what? We don't need to finish the book. We don't need to cover every lesson in a module or a unit. We need to look and say, what are the most important things I need to cover with my class? The other thing this means is we actually have to put a little more responsibility on our students. We talked about that asynchronous, synchronous, and independent work. Now, I don't know about for you, but many teachers in the US got away from doing homework. They had the students do all the work in class because they were there. They knew it would get done if the student was there. We have to expect students to pick up some of that work and support our parents in helping them do that. So we have to adjust exactly what we're expecting to cover. Now, when you adjust that pacing, you can do it in 2 different ways. Actually, you could probably do it in a lot of ways, but I'm going to share 2 different ways with you. The first way we could do it is by looking at the major topics we're teaching at our grade level. Based on the standards or the scope and sequence, your curriculum you're using in your school, you could look at those major topics. You as a team or with your administration could say, this topic here, we don't think is as essential as some of the others. Or you could look within your units or major topic of study and say, I think we can cut out these ideas. And we'll talk about some different ways to identify that in some of the others. But really what I want you to feel is this. It's just the reality. We cannot cover everything we would do in a normal year. We have to adjust that. And you're going to have to do the same thing when students come back face-to-face full-time. And you can't go right back to the level of what we were doing before because of building that. And I would tell you one thing, we don't want to lose some of the asynchronous work our students are doing right now. Now, one of the ways that we've actually done this in our materials is this is the second idea I shared with you. You're going to notice on the left-hand side, this is out of our K-5 science program. So we had what we called a full track. And in this one, what we did is we still covered the topics, but we did not cover the topics in the same depth. So you were going to notice in the full track, it was looking at all of the activities in our 5E cycle. And then when we went over to the flex track, we actually did 2 different versions. Instead of 45 minutes a day, there were 30 minutes a day, and then 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And so what we did is altered what we had as our expectation out of the teacher to deliver in that time frame. And you know what? Once you start to do this, you can identify what things can you remove and yet have the students still have the full learning experience. I will warn you, one thing you don't want to remove out of your pacing, you don't want to remove the student interactivity. And what I mean by that, you still want, in science, for instance, you still want students doing investigations. In math, you still want them doing interactive problem engagement with deep, rich tasks. You don't want to remove that because that's really what cements the math growth. So I have to look at the things I can remove with less importance, okay? Number 3, and this is difficult. This goes back to the very first one, which is say use diagnostic assessment wisely. This is focus on the grade level work. This is a challenge because of that whole learning loss piece. But the primary thing for me to do at second grade is to make sure I'm working with my students on that second grade work. And that's why we're saying if I'm using diagnostic assessment, the things that I want to focus on with my intervention or my support work are the specific precursor concepts they need directly related to what we're doing on the grade level work. Now, that's different in ELA, in language arts, than it is in math or science. And here's why. In ELA, a lot of what we do is focused around skill. So I'm going to work on reading and I can integrate, let's say that I'm a second grade teacher and they were struggling with long A. I can integrate long A into my second grade work and still keep on reading and integrate the phonics. In math, if they're missing a precursor concept on adding or subtracting, then for me to move on to the next one means I need a support piece that's going to help underlie that previous grade level work. But what's important here is when I'm looking at prerequisite topics, I don't need to look at the whole year. I just need to look at the prerequisite topics for the grade level work we're doing right now. Now, in the handout, one of the things I did is I actually put a piece here called 12 Strategies to Engage Students Who Work Below Grade Level. This is from the inclusiveclass.com, and it'll come along with the handout that we're sending, but it talks about 12 different strategies that you can use with students to support them when they're below grade level to do the grade level work. So it's important that we have them working on that. And then you have to focus, when you talk about focusing on the grade level work, we have to focus on the most important work. Now, this is really interesting. And I think you can see as we're going through these, that all these topics tie together, okay? So number 1, I want to use the diagnostic wisely. I don't want to spend all my time teaching past grade level content or prior grade level content. Secondly, I'm adjusting my pacing, okay, because I know I can't do everything I would do in the classroom. And this is true K-12, K-20, K-22, okay? Number 3, I need to focus on the grade level work and supplement the support. And then out of that grade level work, I need to focus on what's most important. And let's think about this for a minute. And I would love for you to throw this in the chat, okay? Just really quick, if you're thinking either ELA or math, for your grade level, what is the most important work? Throw that in the chat real quick. ELA or math, what is the most important work? And I'm going to see, it doesn't like me to do that for some reason. Sharish, if you don't mind, oh, here it goes. Phonics, shapes, reading comprehension, okay, phonics, fluency, ELA grammar, basic skills, okay, phonics. I'm getting a lot of these ones. Number operations, okay, numbers and counting, grade 2. Now, so you think about those. Those are broad categories. For my ELA teacher, all of those things that you were throwing in, fluency and phonics, grammar somebody threw in, all of that I can work on with my grade level work. That's really important. Number and operations, if they don't understand the number and operations from second grade, they're not going to be successful in third grade. If they don't understand number and operations third grade, not going to be successful in fourth grade. One of the ways to determine what the most important work is to actually look at the standards. And in the standards, what it does, it actually lays out to you a lot of times looking at second grade standards, what in the second grade standards are we going to build on for the third grade standards? And in the third grade standards, what are we going to build on in the fourth grade standards? So if I'm a fifth grade teacher, I'm going to look at those fourth grade math standards and say, they were doing this, but you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to look at the sixth grade math standards and identify what I'm teaching in fifth grade, they're going to use in sixth grade. And you know what becomes the most important work? The things they're going to use in the next grade level. Now, there are a couple of tools that we actually created for our teachers, and I want to show you these. One of these, this was for our ELA program in K-5, and it was actually taking the priority standards. And the priority standards were exactly what I just mentioned. We had a group in the US that actually took the standards and said, if I'm a fourth grade teacher, what are the priority standards for me to cover based on what they will be doing in fifth and sixth grade? If I'm a first grade teacher, what are the priority standards that I need to cover that are going to be taught in second and third grade? So it actually did a standards trace and said, if I have to do something, I need to make sure I do these types of things. So what we did is we took this and then we looked and said, in a 10-day cycle, so for us in grades 2 through 5, they're on a 10-day genre cycle and that foundational skill in, but it looked at those skills and said, what are the most important ones that we work on in that? So we did that, and then we also did the same thing for math. And down at the bottom, I'll also have a link in the handout that looked at the priority instructional content in math and ELA. And that's kind of the trace that was done. When you go into the link that I'm going to provide for you. Oh, it didn't want to take me there. Let me go back 1 second. And my control panel is getting in my way. There we go. Oh. My little control panel keeps popping up. There we go. Okay, and I'm gonna actually stop. So Sharice, can you see the web page or are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
PowerPoint.
Okay, let me stop sharing just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna reshare. Let me share my screen this time. Are you seeing the web page now?
That's correct.
Okay, so everyone, this was a group called Achieve the Core, and basically what they did for K all the way through high school, they went in for English language arts and literacy and actually broke the content down about what is that most important priority content. And you can go in and download these files. What we've done as McGraw Hill is we've taken these for our programs and already identified for you what that content should look like in both math and ELA. So finding that most important work is really essential. And then use your, number 5, use your synchronous time strategically. And I'm going to throw this up here, whether we're in person or whether remote in kind of a Zoom room. That live time you have, you really need to think about what you're doing. And let me give you a couple examples of this. Doug Fisher, one of our authors in many of our programs, he supports the literacy work that we did, wrote a book called The Distance Learning Playbook. And in the Distance Learning Playbook, and he actually worked with us in doing some of the work that we've done around distance and remote learning, a couple of the things. Number one, if you're going to model, don't use your synchronous time to model. You can do the synchronous time through a Zoom video and make them watch it prior to class and then discuss that modeling. And what do we mean by modeling? Let's say we're learning adding 2-digit numbers. Then I can actually start out showing them how to do 2 digits number in a 5-minute recording that they watch with their parents. And then when we come back in our synchronous time, we talk about adding those 2-digit numbers, or I get students' responses or them showing their work or things they struggled with. If I'm in ELA and we're working on long A, you know what? I can model long A both phonetically and in a story by video rather than using my synchronous time, which is so precious doing that. So use that time you have with the students, really think about it. I taught, you know, if you're having students read a passage, have them read it on their own first and come back and do some discussion. Okay, but think about what can be done best. And normally it's that discussion where you're seeing students understanding around the word. So choose which pieces you're going to do. Again, one of the pieces that we did, this was for our elementary science program. We actually took all of our components, and you could do this as a team or a grouping in your school. And we looked at the piece we were going to do. So assessing prior knowledge, we have these probes that we use, which are really cool. Engaging, that's talking about the phenomenon that we're going to use. If I use that synchronously, how would I use it? And if I used it asynchronously, how would I use it? So like for me, the probe here, they look at an image, they have a scenario, and they have to choose which is the best answer in that scenario. Asynchronously, I would have them do the probe, and then we would discuss their reasoning in our synchronous time. Engage with the phenomenon. I would have them watch the phenomenon video ahead of time and come up with their initial answer to the phenomenon question. And then in our live time, we would actually be discussing that. But you have to look at those two pieces. This is just an example in math, what we would do in math or ELA for K-5, how we would break what we would do synchronously, asynchronously, and how that ties into those priority standards. So really, really helpful pieces. And then number 6, the final one, is designing for access and equity. When we're doing the hybrid part especially, now in the classroom, we do a better job of this, but when we're doing the hybrid part, we really need to think about, can every student, in a way, access the material or the things I'm asking them to do? And is it equitable for them to do this? Because we all know this. No two of our students are the same. So a couple things we need to think about. Number 1, what I'm asking them to do independently or asynchronously, is it appropriate for how old they are? So for a student in K or 1 or 2, what am I asking them to do, and what instructions do I need to put in for their parents? And then the second one goes along with that. Attend to clarity in the directions. Now, here's why this is so important. You're not there to ask. I just remember in classroom, you would explain, like for me, I would explain a lab activity we were going to do. And then as soon as we got done, they would say, what are we supposed to do? And then we would have to go into that. So make sure that it's appropriate for the age and that the clarity is given inside of that. But the biggest thing about all this is we need to be teaching. We need to be teaching grade level. They need to be learning. So the last thing I'm going to touch on in just about a minute is the balance of synchronous, asynchronous work and independent work. So if you notice the triangle I have here, learning happens with all 3 of these pieces. What you do in the classroom, what you do asynchronously, and what you do independently. So that synchronous time, that would be whole group instruction. Now remember this, if it's modeling, those kinds of things, I had to do that in video. It might be small group, it's activating their prior knowledge, it's reteaching, it's reflection on the work that they've done. Those are the things I want to focus on in my synchronous time. In my asynchronous time, it might be a before less class piece they're going to watch. It might be the application they're doing, the practice, the modeling. All of that is really well done in that asynchronous time. And then remember, we bring that back into our synchronous discussion when we're back together. And then independent is what they do on their own. And just remember, with independent, it's filling those missing gaps. It's accelerating them. It's providing that intervention. But the things that we do in that independent time are not coming back into our synchronous discussion. It's personalized for every single student. And I'm just going to mention this. We have a number of pieces. This is best done with technology. We have a number of programs across our K-12 group that do this very well. They're computer-based, they're adaptive, and they help students work independently on the missing gaps that we in class, whether regular, hybrid, or remote, do not have time to cover. This is one of the lessons I hope we don't learn. So those are the 6 principles for remote and hybrid learning. Just a couple quick follow-up pieces. 1, if your school is looking for more professional development around remote learning or hybrid learning, we have a partnership with a group called Link that actually provides multiple independent paced learning experiences that the teacher can do online. It's application based, but covering all these different topics you see on the screen. That's something you're interested, please reach out to our McGraw Hill group. So we have 2 more sessions. We have one tomorrow that's very similar today for your 612 colleagues. And we have one on the 17th that's going to be quite a bit different, looking at how we maximize intervention in a hybrid scenario. Those are coming up the next 2 days. And then finally, Sharish is going to put the link in the chat again for the document. On the document, there's a breakout session from 4:40 to 5:05. You can choose any of these 3 rooms, and you just click the link to enter the room. I would ask when you enter the room, please mute. Jason Marshall is going to be doing K-5 Science, Christy LaFleur, K-5 Math, and Brandon Bowtie Harvey. I hope you'll have one on this morning for K-5 Literacy. And then we're going to repeat those sessions at 5:10. So you'll see a breakout session 1 on the handout, a breakout session 2 on the handout. So with that, we don't have a lot of time for questions. We'll take the questions that you sent in and try to give you some answers for those. That's the hard thing when there are this number of people on the call, is actually having the time to do that. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and attention over the last 35 minutes. And we know we have a couple of they're 25-minute sessions that are really going to engage you around specific subject areas. So Sharice, I'm going to stop there, turn it over to you.
Thank you, DJ. You mentioned some great points there, by the way. I was like intrigued. There were lots of questions coming in, but I mean, thank you so much for covering such a wonderful session.
Thank you. And then I'll look at the questions and we'll see if we can't respond to some of the major ones that have come up. Yes, you can do that
meanwhile while our audience is getting into the breakout rooms. So as DJ said, I'm just going to repeat once more that we do have the breakout session rooms for you for math, science, and English. You can get into any of these breakout rooms. And thank you, DJ. And we're running this twice because a couple of you have actually asked us in the Q&A if you can attend more than one. So yes, there is a repeat. You can attend right now from 4:40 to, this is Gulf Standard Time. You can attend one right now for Inspire, Reveal, and Wonders. And we have another one following it. So if you want to attend Science first, then you can get into the math breakout session. Dropping the links again for the document that DJ is sharing. So you have all the details for the speaker who's doing each of the session and what it's going to cover, and the link for the breakout room. Anything else for us to cover?
I think that's it. So you will have to leave this meeting before you join the breakout room, but then download that document first or bring it open on your screen. The links, just click on the link, it will take you into the breakout room.
Yes, the breakout rooms will be recorded as well. I still see attendees here. There are about 600 people. You will have to leave this webinar and get into the other. How do you enter into the breakout room? Good question. So the link that we have just shared has the option to enter the breakout room. It has another link. So you will have to click on that link depending on what session you want to join. It's this document.
So yes, so right on the screen, the link that Sharish put in the chat is the document you're seeing on the screen. Just pick the session you want and you'll see under each room, it will have the breakout link. Just click on that link and it will take you directly to that room.
If you're not able to click on the link, Najwa, you can copy and paste it on your browser, but the link is clickable.
Yep. So if that's not working for you, great suggestion, just copy and paste it in. And also, if you needed to type it in, they're very simple. http://bit.ly/ then Inspire K-5, Reveal K-5, or Wonders K-5.
I should be getting in my breakout room.
Yep, go ahead.
But there are already 400 people here.
I'm gonna, if you make me an alternate host, Sharish.
Oh, excellent. Let's do that. Thank you, DJ, for that suggestion.
You're welcome. And then I'll keep this one open until the number drops way down.
Thank you for your help.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Just before I leave, as DJ said, just click, yes, that's the reveal math link. Oh, would you like us to share the link separately? Trying to open the Wonders link, it's not working.
Okay, let me try it on my screen. So if
I'm just reading one of the comments.
Yeah.
It's working? Okay, I'm gonna go now. Thank you, DJ.
Yep. It is working for me. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the chat more easily. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Let me grab. Okay, that I just put in the chat, the link to the document. Let me try one other thing for people that are using mobile. Let me go back and get the original links. Here's the math link. I'm going to grab the science link right now, which is the first room. Here's the science link. And then I'll find the literacy link and put that up there as well. Hang on one second, I'll put the math link in again. There's the literacy link. Here's math again. So for some of these, they will provide a handout for the session and the recordings based on the email you did. Okay, so all of the links should be in the chat right now, both the literacy or the English. So if you scroll up in the chat just a little bit, all of those links should be there for you. There's math again. Here's science again. Thanks, Paula. I appreciate that. I will get some coffee and some breakfast in just a little bit. And here is the literacy or English. Okay, I'm going to put them all back in. If it's not clickable, then I would copy and paste it. Should be clickable though. Yeah, hang on just one second, Veda. Amini, I would try to click back in the room again. Yes, you do need to leave this room to join the link. So if you click on this link, if you click on the link, it will ask you if you want to leave this room. You do need to leave this room. Okay, I'm gonna put them all back on the screen again. Well, tomorrow I will have them all up and ready to go in one copy. Give me just 1 minute and I'll get the math, literacy, and the science ones in there. Okay, and I just put in the chat all three, literacy, math, and science. And you should be able to click on those right in the chat to take you to the other meeting. Yep. Durdana, if you just joined, we finished the actual keynote session and they're now in the breakout sessions. In the chat, I just put in the links to the other three rooms, to science, literacy, and math, or ELA and math. And all those links are right there. Just click on that. We'll ask you to leave this meeting. So guys, with that, I am going to sign off. But the links are in the chat right now. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do that, or you can click into the document. So have a great morning. Thank you. And if you have 612 colleagues, encourage them to attend tomorrow. And then you might want to think about the 17th. And on the 17th, we have a session like this specifically around intervention.